It's October 10th to, oh, I'll start over. So it is October 10th, 2022. We are starting our 2 o'clock working session meeting with the Board of County Commissioners. We let the record reflect that Commissioner Kearns is in the conference room. I'm on Zoom. Commissioner French is away on county business. There, I see everybody. And so we are going to start off this afternoon with Gary is going to be talking to us about our budget capital request presentations. So Gary, I'll let you start.
Thank you, Commissioner. Well, today we have 3 departments presenting their capital supplemental requests. We're going to be starting off with facilities, and next will be parks and recreation, and then we'll wind up today with fair and expo. And I think Jill and Bruce have a presentation prepared for the board to go through. If you want to explain those capital item requests and take it from there.
Okay. All right, so let's go to the first. Oh, good afternoon, commissioners. Let's go to the first slide, Ron. Hey, so we sat down, we did some planning through some of the items that I'm going to be talking about today, and we put together kind of a 6-year plan, but we really wanted to stay focused on infrastructure to the county and the county campus. Right now, what we're looking at is we have over the last 5 years, we've been really looking at ways so we can really balance our energy consumption with some of the newer products that are in the industry, kind of what they call low-hanging fruit. So I'd like to go through these kind of one step at a time to give you an overview. And on the first one, next slide. I know I've been talking about this one for a while, but it is finally here. This is the House Bill 1257, the Green Buildings Act. It was basically, the conversations really went in place in 2019. It was signed in November of 2020. And we were actually notified here in November with a letter from the Department of Commerce. So the Department of Commerce came and set some standards to the Green Buildings Act to try to lower greenhouse gases within about a 5 to 7 year stretch based on the size of the building. So what we did is, on our side of it, we took a deep dive and we looked at some of the calculations of some of what they call low-hanging fruit to see whether or not how we could get our buildings to qualify, but actually do some changes that'll actually be around for a while. So we took a little bit of a different approach. We solicited through several companies, McKinstry, Amoresco, Millig Design Build, and we were presented more with kind of the quick fixes, but they really weren't going to add a lot of value to the campus. So what we did was we took more of an infrastructure approach to look at some of the aging equipment that we actually have here on campus and took that approach that way. And the calculations for reduction of percentages to hit those energy usage targets. We actually have a group right in here right now, the Harris Group. There are selected engineering firm are actually doing a feasibility study to show us what that could potentially look like. So the idea is that we do run the heating system. We put a lot on the steam utility, and there are a lot more higher efficiency systems right now per building. And what we want to do is try to get back to that and try to really model our building towards some of the Energy Star stuff that we have been putting together for some of these other remodels. The medical examiner building, the crisis stabilization center. Even though those are older retrofit buildings, we've been able to hit the energy standards that we need to hit on those. So that's what we really wanted to stay focused on. There are some challenges I did put in here, especially for the ones that are on the historic registry. we can't go out and just change out and put all vinyl windows in and things that'll actually change the appearance of the courthouse. We have to, that's why the infrastructure really kind of caught our attention, is we can change some of the stuff under the skin and get a higher efficiency than what we're using right now. Next slide. So we started out doing this. We created a team. Myself, Michael, Ken Moore, and Frank from the county projects group. And we're actually working with some of the building owners. So we can really see, you know, what makes the most sense for the long term. You know, I guess I have to go back and I have to look at, when I came on board here 6 years ago, I actually had a couple windows replaced over in the Public Works building. And that was 6 years ago. And at the cost that I had those, I started working up a project for Scott. And at the time I had River City came and did the replacements on them. I took the number of windows and I thought, you know, I wonder what it looks like from now till then, you know, what we'd be seeing. So we did a count on all the windows on the south side. And if I would have replaced them at that rate, even factoring in, say, a snorkel lift and some other equipment involved, it was going to be about 185,000. I had it quoted, it was 750,000. So that tells you what 6 years have done, especially for supply chain wise. So it's been a huge increase, but I think that's why we really want to take a look at infrastructure wise, what can we change? So we're working on that right now. And then the plan going forward from there is we have a little bit more time than I originally looked through. I actually read the bill one more time. It looks like 3 of our buildings will actually fit under the 2028 deadline. So we only have 2 of them, and they happen to be 2 buildings that are fairly simple for us to retrofit, the Public Works and Juvenile Detention, that have to hit that 2027. The hard part for us is we only have these limited timelines that we can actually affect the heating of these buildings. So we have to start in the spring and we have to be done by the end of summer. So that's why I laid this out over that 3 years. You'll see on that first slide. And these numbers were just guesses. I tried to get it as close as I possibly could, knowing that contingency inside these, because I know for some of the upgrades that we want to do here in the courthouse, we'll have to actually take the backside of the building. We'll have to take the roof off in order to make those changes. So that's why I threw in the added contingency on those. So next slide. What happens if we don't comply? So if we don't comply and so I guess there's 2 things that I want to keep everybody aware of. Even though we have what happens if we don't comply and hit our EUI targets, Department of Commerce is not going to bankrupt the county and make us have to do everything to hit those targets. But we have to get registered in and we have to start down that road. And any reduction that we see, we've seen reductions in the last 6 years just by going to LED lighting. So we've actually been able to see it. We can calculate a percentage on it. So we're pretty happy with the way that goes. But I think with the way energy rates have been lately, I think that this would be money well spent for us to really take a really good look at that. And we already have, all these buildings were independent buildings at one time anyway. So to put them back in that direction, we would still maintain our chiller plant, which is, they're almost the identical chillers that are being sold today. We're just looking at that steam side of it. So next slide. So if we look at the benefits of our plan, is 1, we'll meet all the requirements of House Bill 1257. We'll see a reduction in energy consumption with the savings, reduction in greenhouse gases, which gets us to that Energy Star rating. Reliability of new equipment for the future. That's I think really huge. You'll see in some of the slides that I attached to this, we have some 50-year-old equipment that we're operating on right now. And I think that this will really change what we're trying to achieve. And then last but not least is the diversity of the mechanical workforce. So right now, we can't find first class and second class boiler operators. That is kind of a very slow fading group of individuals. They don't have any training, specific training for it. And then also, even to achieve that license, you got to have like about 2 years on the job training to have it. We thought about doing an apprenticeship program here a year or two back, but we would only want to do that with the commitments because the hospitals and the wages that they're putting out right now for these operators, they're just becoming very, very hard to come by. So that's one of the things, but some of the good stuff that we've done. So, well, let's go to the next slide. We'll take a look at these are some of the energy systems that we really need to take a look at. You know, a lot of these old systems, there are more efficient systems. You guys might remember here last summer, not this last summer, but the summer before, we had the month-long heat wave that we had. We slowly started to lose ground on our chillers. Even though we have plenty of capacity, we didn't have enough refrigerant cooling capacity. So we were adding cold city water to our cooling systems and flushing it down the drain in order to keep our systems operating, to keep the jail cool, juvenile cool, the courthouse. So we have found something there. That's something that we have done. And we will look at resizing a cooling tower that I put in the budget for next year. And not only by doing that, but if we go to like a 4-stage cooling tower system on top of the roof there, we'll be able to slow down our GPM that we're sending through the tunnels, and we'll be able to save energy that way. So we can bring it down from about 3 gallons per minute down to 2, and we can achieve a higher cooling rate. So that would also be a good one for us to put in the portal for House Bill 1257. Next slide. So you'll see on these doors, this is our boiler plant system right now. There's 2 sides to each one of these boilers, and we have 4 total. We are actually at that level where we're starting to look at whether or not we need to actually take these doors off and get the refractories done. That's usually anywhere from about $35,000 to $40,000 a door to have those done, because they are 50 years old. They still run it, we still can do a lot with them, but right now, capacity wise, even on the coldest days, we're lucky if we have 2 of them running. So the need for steam, like when we had the old radiant systems and stuff here, that's when they would run 3 boilers constantly. We just don't see that now, but we do always maintain, for a small amount of steam, we maintain the entire distribution loop at high pressure, which is actually coming at a cost. We've tried to go over with the city, potentially reducing the code so we can bring the pressures down. The problem that we've found is that it's the system itself gets kind of cranky when we start cooling it down and heating it back up. So on that side of it, that's why we're looking at replacing these systems. Next slide. So what we're looking at is these are the 2 systems that we installed in the medical examiner and the mental health crisis stabilization facility. Both of them just over 20,000 square feet. The systems that we'd be looking at are a little bit bigger, but these are redundant systems. So you're never down. You always have that insurance policy. And these systems, they can, based on usage, they can throttle way down. They can stay in a warm-up position and then they can react immediately. We can use them to heat hot water. We can use these new high efficiency units are a lot similar to what they're using in all new construction right now. The best part about this next slide. So 6 years ago when I got here, that picture you're looking at on the left was our building automation system. What you're looking at on the right is where we're at now. So we have actually leaps and bounds our infrastructure for the way that we monitor our buildings and our steam. We have come a long way. We have really good control, and we're actually looking at right now metering our building's energy usage real time. So we're really getting to that level that we want to be, but we still have some steps that we need to take. Next slide. Just want to go over it. So down below, one of these steps as part of this House Bill, Clean Buildings Act, is we also think that we are leaching off some energy on our switch stations. You'll see on this one was installed in 1975. It was put in the closed on position and has never been cycled. And we are literally getting to the point where if we did have a major trip on that system, we may not be able to get it back. This one specifically actually is the power for the courthouse. So we do maintain it. We keep it clean around it. We keep the area conditioned the best that we can. We've found that we can kind of extend that longevity a little bit by doing that. But again, it's some of these systems along with some of the other newer systems that we definitely want to get in place for the future. So on top of that, next slide. These are some of these were the punch list items that we really had on our 6-year campus upgrades. Some of the stuff we really need to take a look at is the courthouse elevator upgrade. Our courthouse is probably next on the list for an elevator failure. And man, every time those elevators go down, the courts call my office. So I would really like that would keep that one on the list. Main lobby public works, 4th floor public works. The main lobby public works, we're actually working on a project right now to really see on public works, customer facing entities, what fits the best there and what would that look like? So we've got a team together with public works groups, building and planning, and some of the other departments. We're taking a really good look at what would fit best over there. I have the windows on the south side of the public works. They are delaminating. Unfortunately, I did file a claim on it, but it was denied because they're over 25 years old. But I tried anyway. But anyway, we have that on there, but they are starting to fail. But it's unusual that it is mainly the south side ones. We believe that the seals on them are breached because some of the tinting is wrinkling on them. So that tells me that we're getting, air inside of them. Broadway Center building, HVAC and elevator, we've had that on there for quite a while. And it is something that, if we decide to do any improvements to the Broadway Center building, I know I get a lot of calls for windows. We did the roof repairs. We have put in some HVAC, like the ductless units, but we haven't done anything with the major unit. The chilling system and the elevator is due for an upgrade. So I do have those on there. So if we want to keep that building compliant and move forward, those are some of the items I need to take a look at. Public safety building lobby. This is just something I'm constantly challenged with district court, the sheriff's office, some of the other groups about, trying to get them more space in their building that they have. And it's really hard when we put people in these really tiny areas behind fire exit doors, when they have this massive lobby that we really haven't evaluated, that they could potentially use some of that space. So that's just some of the ask, to really take a look at a plan to do that, because I know district court, I know they've been looking for more space, some updates to their areas with some restrooms and stuff. So that's just something I keep on my radar. Adult detention building, we
You
are,
know what's gonna happen, as soon as we eat into the lobby area, they're gonna come back and say, our lobby's too small. It's like,
yeah. And you know, I think that's right, into the respect where I think before the security levels with 9/11, I think there were a lot more people in the lobby. But there's one whole side of the lobby that we don't even utilize. In fact, we have the exit doors are roped off. So, I mean, I think that there are areas of that facility though that I think that we could potentially do something with. It's just on my list, because I'll get a letter from, you know, Judge Smith or Judge Leland, they want another conference room, or, you know, and Bruce and I have evaluated, you know, in every way but Sunday, but we can't block off the fire exit doors. So this would be kind of something that we could build out on that. On those adult detention right now, we're knee deep in the kitchen remodel. It's looking really, really good. We've redone all the plumbing now in that facility. We've actually redid the VAV boxes, the old pneumatic ones. They'll have better control in there, and we've gotten them. We're putting in new workstations and sinks, and it should be really nice, and a full new epoxy floor. We remember last year we redid the AC units in the cold boxes so we could keep those, and that has worked fantastic. So slowly but surely we keep chipping away at some of those items in the jail. Courthouse and annexes. Again, we have some areas in there that we definitely would like to take a look at, and take a look at how we could better utilize some of the space. And then we've got, of course, the Gardner Center building, the parking lot there. I need to start planning. I just wanted to get it on the 6-year to redo that parking lot, the loading dock, and some of that area where you walk across that little man bridge. And I think the salt has kind of worn it down over time. And I think it's definitely getting due for an upgrade. I attached a work order to the end of it. So I brought Bruce with me too, if you have any questions about anything that we're presently working on. I kind of went over the jail kitchen, and then Bruce can answer any questions for anything that's presently going on.
Gil, could we take a step back a little bit and focus
Okay.
on the dollars you're asking for in 23 budget for capital?
Yes, so in 23, what we're looking at right now, 23, we haven't started, we still have a lot of planning to do on the Clean Buildings Act. But one of the things that we do have on here is, we do have the 500,000. This is really to go out and really look at with an engineering firm and actually start the actual process of putting a package together so we can see what those numbers look like. The ones that we're actually doing right now is we're looking at what are the most cost-effective alternatives that will give us the longevity that we'd like to see. And then the other side of that, the second item there is for the new cooling tower. We'd like to bring over Kaufman to look at the structural. If I've looked at the loads, right? If we remove one of the units, we should be able to put like a kind of a 4-stage cooling tower system, which we will, before we purchase it, we'll register to start the Clean Buildings Act, and then we can actually start monitoring that one right away. So that one we should see an immediate impact on that one. We've got the building automation upgrades. So where we're at with building automation upgrades is we have some systems that are out there right now that are still pneumatic. We need to get those taken care of. We need to get the building automation, the newest version, put in place, and we're potentially looking at our own server to actually run our stuff on. Every time the county does a security risk virus protection update, our systems all shut down, and it takes us about a day and a half to get everything back online. So, and without knowing those systems, that's been a really tough one to get through. I do have the Public Works one on here for the Windows. And then campus expansion. Again, campus expansion, some of the stuff we've looked at right away for the 5 million is we've got the first floor of the Public Works. We've got the fourth floor of the Public Works. We've got some areas here in the courthouse that we still would like to take a look at the process flow on. There's a lot of stuff right now that we have really on our list, and that is just kind of a rough number that I threw in there, or that could be a number if we were going to purchase something to take a look that direction. And then I've got the general campus remodels. I did the 1 million over the next 3 years. One of the things that we would like to take a look at is Bruce and I are having a harder time shutting an area down to do business in. So Bruce and I have looked at over in our facility where we have purchasing right now is we'd like to build a temporary office facility because we already have the network set up over there, network and phone. We would like to build a facility with a conference room, with some office space. So when now we can actually, if we get that ability to get an area, we can actually keep it on track, and we don't have to have contractors coming in at midnight and working till 6 a.m. We can relocate departments. That was one of the ideas with that money. So we could temporarily relocate them while we're remodeling their areas. Because I do have the space available, and we know that's been one of our biggest challenges, when we did the Treasury Department and some of the other remodels that we've done, is we really have no place to put anybody temporarily. So that was one of the ideas that we came up with, and that was part of that cost.
Now, Gil, I've seen the order in which you've listed those for 2023. Is that your priority order, starting with the Green Buildings Act facility improvements?
It is.
And how far does that get us toward eventually replacing those boiler systems?
So this is only the first stage. So what this gives us is it gives us, we will be able to solicit out and bring an actual mechanical group in that can actually set up a spec for it, for the equipment that we need to reach the calculations that we want. We looked at—
It's a necessary precondition to getting the boilers replaced.
Exactly. So what I really want to look at with that too is the monies that I put on top of it was I was really looking at, this might be a good model to do like a GCCM project because it is a 100% guaranteed project. So the group that you're actually bringing in that will oversee the install, not only are they designing it and overseeing the install of it, but they have to guarantee
The energy savings, right?
Exactly. So once we register them into the portal with the Department of Commerce, they have to meet that requirement that they say they're gonna meet.
And just as a quick calculation, going down your first 4 priority items, those total up to just a little over 2 million before we get to the big $5 million campus expansion and then the general campus remodels, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, just some of the questions I wanted to ask for clarification.
Those are great questions. Yeah, that, like I said, those Those first two get us going down that road for House Bill 1257. And then you can see the 3 years projected out past that. Those are only projections. And I came up with those based on some of the equipment installs and retrofits we did in existing buildings that I took those numbers from installing those mechanical spaces. So it was just kind of a cost per square foot. The courthouse will be a little bit of a challenge, but we think that we've got a solution for that. So we have an area that actually is in between the courthouse and the public safety building that we may be able to utilize. So it's right about, and it's in a perfect location because it's underneath that courtyard vent stack location. So we may be able to actually utilize that, actually bringing in a lot of this equipment.
Gil, is the, under the cooling tower updates, is that design work only, or does that actually include the equipment and estimates of equipment and installation?
No, that's actually that's with design work added into that.
But it includes the equipment and installation as well?
Yes.
Okay, those aren't part of the $5 million numbers.
No, so going back on that, so between Michael and myself, we know how this needs to operate. So we've done the calculations, we know where we're gonna see savings wise. So we've basically done all that ahead of time. I don't wanna pay somebody to do it again. I think this is one of those ones that we definitely got to see the shortfall here, not this last summer, but the summer before, that where we sat and where the deficiency was. And working with Carrier, I think that that's where, again, HVAC wise for this part of the country, our temperatures have been going up, especially in the summertime. This was a good summer, so we were able to actually run at about maybe 70%. So even on the hottest days, but again, with a bigger cooling tower supply, we would definitely be able to get a lot more out of our chillers.
And then kind of a similar question on the building automation upgrades. That's not just the design team coming up with some ideas for solutions, that is actually performing the upgrades, getting us to automation in our
Yep.
heating and cooling systems.
Yeah, so Jeff Buer is our building automation specialist over there. Actually hired him from Johnson Controls.
Okay.
So all the stuff that we're doing a lot of that in-house. They would actually do the software implementation upgrade, but this portion of it here would be to change out some of the older equipment that wouldn't be able to communicate with that.
Okay.
So we came up with a number, and then again, we came up to about 280,000, but we just put it up to 300.
Okay. Thank you.
Bill, I've got a couple of questions.
Sure.
So with this separate server, I guess one of my questions would be, in doing so, then how are we ensuring that we're making sure we've got all the latest security updates and all of that? And so is that requiring extra work on the part of IT versus what they're doing? So I mean, that's one of the questions I have.
So our system there, Mary, all it does is it controls the operation of the building. It never interferes inside the county infrastructure. It only talks to our system. We need to have some type of separation from their server system, and we can keep our server with them, but we need to have it marked and we need to have it separated so they don't just go do a blanket across the board antivirus update without letting us know. And what happens is, like the last one, we came in on Monday and the fire panels weren't talking to our system, and we had everything was an alarm, and a lot of systems were shut down. We really need to be a part of that upgrade, our energy management folks, because the more of this that we see out there right now is that they're doing these updates more often and we don't find out, and it just creates a lot more work for us. But our system that we have doesn't talk to the county system at all. All it does is it talks to lights and it talks to air handlers and chillers and boilers. It doesn't talk to the Treasury Department or any place else.
Is that
It's-
a better cybersecurity system, having them separate like that?
I believe it is. I mean, it is, on our side of it, it is only for the reason where, we don't know what the effects of some of these virus updates that they do, how it affects our system. And we've had VFDs, go out on us. We've had to actually bring vendors in to reload them, reboot them. So what we really need to do is we need to take whatever update that they need to do to keep those updated, and we need to run it by Johnson Controls first, so we can see how it will affect our system.
Okay, so it sounds like, I could see that being an issue across the county. Though with other systems that are, like elections has theirs, I think is somewhat separate as well. So I know, so Scott, that may be something to talk to IT about as well. I'd want to make sure that we're doing it in coordination with IT, so that way we can be sure that if yours is a separate system, it's still getting the updates that it needs.
Yes.
Because as we know, people can come in from anywhere.
Yep. Yeah,
So then my other thing, oh, go ahead.
no, so our system that we have so where we're at right now is that's kind of the difference. The difference is that nothing else talks to this but the Metasys system. The Metasys system is the one that actually controls all the buildings in the county campus. So there's really it only talks to the equipment. So you physically get on the Metasys system with Johnson Controls, you do your update through them, it goes out and keeps everything running smoothly. So that's the difference, but our system should never talk to the county systems. So we want to keep our server with them, keep it in their server room, only because we've put a lot of new equipment in there on keeping that stuff live and operating, and the backup systems that they have with the UPS systems. We love the idea of keeping it there. It's just, we just want to keep our servers separated from theirs.
I think Commissioner CUNY raises a really good point, just to ensure that we're really in lockstep with IT as part of their cybersecurity evaluations, system monitoring, penetration testing. While I understand this is probably more of like a separate network firewalled off, maybe a SCADA type of system that's not part of our entire network, just to ensure that there's good IT awareness and involvement as these things get established, and we're doing testing on it too, even though they manage separate systems.
Yep.
Not accessible, let's make sure they're not accessible, that sort of thing.
Right. Yep.
So just because, as you're saying, if Johnson Controls has access to our system, it could be something that comes in from them to us. So, just the things I want to make sure we're coordinating and aware of. The other question I have is, at the end of COVID, we did the space study. And
Yep.
so I haven't heard how we've taken any of that information and how that's then helping us talk about what you're wanting to do. So, I can say, I don't know, Josh, if you've gotten any more information, but since we kind of had the basic report, I haven't heard what our thoughts are, what our plans are. Is there things that we're taking from that and choosing to do? So that's before I would agree to any of the money being spent. I would want to know kind of where we're out there.
And I think that's the step one that we have right now, is the team that we've assembled to look at the first floor of the lobby. I think one of the challenges there was the public facing services and difficulty in finding them. And that's one of the things that we're evaluating right now based on the space study. you know,
Which building are
the
you referring to?
public works.
Public Works one.
So now that we have the family law area emptied out there, sorry, James and Scott are taking a look at all the customer service facing entities, potentially some of the ones that are actually in this building. Our last meeting that we had, we talked about the potential strategy of having somebody over there from recording and somebody over there, a cashier, some of these things that they don't have to leave that building when they're doing or anything with building and planning and have to come back over to here. So that's something that we're evaluating right now, but that was something based on the space study. Some of the other things from the space study, again, is it's getting the department heads from the different departments to really take that deep dive and, knowing how COVID changed the way that they operated their departments, what does that look like for them in the future? Now we have a really good idea of, head count, who we had on campus, who we had, during the pandemic, what did it look like before the pandemic and after the pandemic? I mean, I think that's all good information, and it's good information in the way that you use it. But again, it's the groups that actually need to take that information and actually see how they can use that to their benefit.
So, but I guess that's where I don't want to go spend money on places that I guess, not knowing how all that's working, that we're going to go spend money that maybe it's not where we want to. So, I mean, if you guys are just starting that, and you're putting $5 million aside, I'm not comfortable with that without having more discussion on it, I guess.
Yeah, no, in fact, the money that I put in for that was really to take a really good look at, if we have the money, what are systems that'll help us with the planning side, the way that we use the county campus right now. Are there other things that we can do with that money that'll even change the way that looks? I guess I always look at the way some of the newer groups are doing business. There's the information out there. How are they getting that information? How easy is it to get that information? I think those are really the things, and I think starting out this way, I think that's really what that placeholder was for. That, and then just, putting together some monies to, do some more, campus expansions and remodels.
It's like Ashley has her hand raised.
Yep.
Yeah. So I just kind of as a follow-up to what Gil was talking about with the space study, Gil did give me an opportunity to review it, and kind of what stuck out to me is we took that as directors at a time when we were still kind of in COVID, and I think a lot of people who originally went offsite during COVID wound up coming back. So Mary, or Commissioner Kearney, I hear what you're saying about, what does the study say that we have and need? But some of the stuff that they put in there really wasn't feasible either. And so I think, to Gil's point, it's a great thing, and maybe we need to talk about it a bit more, but I don't know if it provides us the roadmap. At least I didn't see the roadmap that would make it a very easy decision to say, okay, all of Public Works building can now be this, or we can put these departments together. To me, when I read it, it wasn't as easy to follow now that most of our employees are back on site again in some capacity or another.
The other
No,
side.
and I'm okay.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I was going to say I'm okay with that, but I guess I'm not seeing what roadmap we have, and so as a commissioner who's making a decision on millions of dollars, I want to see where a roadmap is, and I thought we were kind of using that either as a basis or not. If we're not going to use it as a basis, then so be it. But I guess I want to have a better perspective. That was supposed to give us kind of more of a countywide perspective. And so I guess I want to see what that county-wide perspective is before I start making decisions this way.
And, you know, I think that roadmap, you know, for this, the post-pandemic space planning, I really kind of felt like on my mind that a lot of the department heads would be coming to me and saying, hey, this is the model that I want to change my department to. What does that look like? How do we design that so Bruce and I can actually start making those changes? The other thing I would really want to talk about too is we did a post-pandemic space study to really look at the space that we were presently utilizing, what it looked like during the pandemic, and what it looked like post-pandemic. Once we did, we did additions to communications and networking, and we did a lot of changes. But the one thing we still have not really done here is we still really haven't done a master plan. Now, a master plan is I know a lot of times this got kind of labeled as a master plan, but a master plan is really, that is kind of the roadmap that gets laid out, that makes the recommendations that you actually follow. You know, I mean, these were kind of recommendations to how can I get my department there? Like, this is what it looks like. This is what it looked like during the pandemic. And this is what it should look like coming back. But when you do a master plan, they're the ones that really go in and evaluate everything from your operating systems to every part of how the campus goes. I went through one of these with my old company that I worked for, where we did a total integration where we had like 13 different operating systems that did warehousing and production, and it did everything. And we rolled every one of those entities into an SAP during a master plan because there was too much inefficiencies with these different systems. So that's, I guess, what I see the difference. But I do see your point with the space planning. And I put those figures in there for groups that would want. I've had Superior Court wants me to build a new courtroom, and yeah, I get those, and these are just placeholders. That's really what that one is. So although I could spend the $5 million updating carpets and windows, and I mean, there is a way for me to spend that money, but you know, concrete work and new driveways and all kinds of stuff. But anyway, that's really what that is.
I would
Scott.
kind of add this to it as well. While the space study didn't provide us a roadmap, it provided us a really good inventory of who used what spaces, the people that were in there, the numbers, and gave an opportunity for departments to kind of pose the question themselves around what does this look like going forward and how might I change my operation? At least in the Public Works building, what it's done is given the team an opportunity to evaluate the various floors that they're on right now that have been historically customer facing, and how do we make it easier for the community to do business with the county. And that then triggered off an evaluation of moving customer service facing functions out of the first floor, which then frees up spaces on other floors. It's also an evaluation of okay, the individuals who are working like a hybrid schedule, some in the office, some at home, how do you start stepping into shared office space that then frees up even more space to then be able to repurpose? So we're starting to get, I think the piece that Commissioner Keeney's asked for, and the rest of the BOCC would benefit from, is as we're beginning to create that roadmap. You know, we only may know 3 steps ahead.
Yeah.
But that first step's going to create space availability that could then allow for another roadmap opportunity, which will then create some space opportunity and for another one. So what we probably ought to do is start laying it out and sequencing at least as far that we can see in our head, this step creates this step, creates this step, and maybe we're only 3 steps out on our roadmap, but it begins to see how they all kind of fit together and how the space, we're being smart about our space planning and repurposing the space. Because we get to the 4th floor, we've talked about the budget office and is it purchasing grant, all those other things, well, then where does that free up space elsewhere? So that's gonna be an ultimate sequencing, and it's hard to crystal ball everything, but maybe even the initial couple of steps that we've envisioned as being able to step into, and what those, rather than a $5 million number, start to break that out a little bit and say, well, to do this, it would probably cost us that. To do this, then it would probably cost us this. And it gives a little bit more definition to it, and it gives some visibility to the commissioners as to what that amount may be.
That was kind of where, that was that placeholder, because I looked at the numbers that we think we're coming up with on the second floor. I put that down onto the first floor. That was about my 1.2 million. And then I went up to the fourth floor to do that complete remodel there. I was looking at, so I did kind of step those out all the way to the level where we built the small office facility up at the facilities building.
Okay. So I think that then having a little bit of a detailed breakdown as a supplemental sheet to that number here.
Okay.
What are those amounts are made up of? So it's not just a $5 million number.
Yeah.
And I would just add in that part of this exercise for creating the capital 6-year listing here is this also builds into the capital facilities plan, which is built into the comprehensive planning effort that building and planning works on. And so some of this is, if we don't throw it on a list now, we have to do a special amendment to get it on a list later at certain points. So some of it's easier to list certain items and throw a dollar amount in now.
No, and I get that, but then it's also where, I don't know if Josh gets it, but I'll definitely get people going, well, we didn't know that the space was going to become available, another department head. And why did you commissioners approve that? And so, I want to make sure that the commissioners are really approving those things and really looking at it, because we're going to have department heads or other electeds coming back to us saying, we thought you knew and you didn't tell us and you didn't, let us know. So as we all know, space planning at the county is very, everybody is close to everybody there, that they get very emotional about it, I will say. So, I just, feel like that is something that we as commissioners are really supposed to be helping look at and plan. And so we should be part of the process.
Mm-hmm.
We will pull some of that road mapping together to give that continued visibility to the three of you, and you can see what's been proposed and weigh in on it, and then it keeps that kind of fresh in everyone's minds to then know, okay, what then next might be on the roadmap.
And it's, it's just helpful too, because, is a remodel necessary versus getting a new HVAC system for a building? Those are, I think, decisions when Josh, first became commissioner, and I shortly thereafter, were much harder decisions than we have now. We have a little bit more in reserves, and a little bit more funding for. So, but I feel like in the next coming years, we're going to be back to having to really prioritize. And so I just want to make sure that, that's a decision that we have to make as commissioners as we prioritize that.
Well, and I just because we're coming out of the pandemic or out of the pandemic doesn't mean everybody needs to come back to campus too. I think a lot of the departments have sort of gone back to the mindset of, we need everybody back in the office. We passed a telecommute policy for a reason. It wasn't just because of the pandemic. Right. It was to help also alleviate the space constraints that we had. And I think, maybe Ashley, maybe that's something we need to remind some of our department heads of, that just because somebody can come back and work in the office doesn't mean that they have to. That if you do your job with a telephone and a computer, let them do it from home. Mm-hmm. As long as they can keep up with the work that's expected of them, give them that option. It's not just space constraints, it's also a recruitment tool. That folks have that ability to do that. And so I think a lot of people are just sort of drifting back into their pre-pandemic ways of get everybody down here in the office and work in person.
Yeah,
That's
I
not
would
the
agree.
world we live in anymore.
Yeah, I completely agree, Commissioner Kearns. And as we look at bringing leader builds back again next year, we're going to refocus on leadership. How do you manage a hybrid workforce? Those are all conversations that I think a lot of people just still don't feel comfortable with. And so I'm with you, though. It's massively a recruiting tool. We recruit people on that, but we also lose people on the back end when we don't offer it. So it's something it's expected from many employees and from many people looking for jobs. And I'm in agreement with you. In the positions that we can offer some sort of flex or remote scheduling, we really need to be looking at that.
Okay, that's all I got.
All right, well, thank you. Well done.
Okay, all right.
Thanks, everyone.
Pick up your 8 million on the way out.
Yeah, yeah.
And commissioners, in case it wasn't stated, of course, we're not looking for any action or decisions today. This is information only that is helping to feed and inform on the capital budget process, not only for the 6th year, but for 2023. So it's a chance for you to, like you've been doing here, ask questions, and then ultimately coming back and saying, what is the ability to, what is the capacity to be able to absorb any, all, none of these, as you've heard from each of the departments who have capital requests.
Okay, good afternoon. I'm hoping Ron can pull up our presentation. In our preparations, Paul and I only slipped in one extra project from 2024 that we'll just kind of slide right by when we get to it. But so we're trying to be very thorough, overly thorough here today. We too have enjoyed putting together a 6-year capital plan, and as Scott mentioned, we're speaking specifically to the 2023 projects here today. And we noticed our facilities group has similar taste in the PowerPoint theme there. So next slide, please. And with the exception of the Plants Ferry Stormwater Project, we are requesting these projects, and we'll be speaking to these projects here in the slides ahead. And so can come back to this at the very end to recap, but I'll go ahead and advance to the next slide. And one of the neat things about all the projects on the list this year is they're all specific to improving or enhancing existing county parks infrastructure, so and other county-owned facilities. So we're really pleased with that. The first project that I'm speaking to is the Linwood Holmberg court renovation and conversion project. In terms of ranking and priority of the projects on the list, as Gary mentioned earlier, this is ranked number 5. For this, we're requesting $425,000. This particular project is a carryover from 2021 and 2022. The photo you're looking at is at our Linwood Park, and you can see some pickleballers set up some temporary nets, portable nets, to turn the existing tennis courts into pickleball courts. And just again, next slide. Looking at proximity. During the pandemic, visitation within county parks easily doubled park system wide. One of the many activities that exploded in popularity during this time was pickleball. While popular with all ages, the greatest growth appears to be within our senior population. So having heard from a growing number of individuals in the community interested in more opportunities to play pickleball, as well as tennis players, we looked at doing some planning to more thoroughly evaluate the needs out there. One of the things we found is that according to the Sports and Fitness Industry Association 2019 report, pickleball continues to be one of the fastest growing sports in the US with over 3.3 million participants. I think in the last year or so, this has become the state sport for Washington State. And the growing participation nationally for pickleball is also being felt. Again, we've been able to invest in a couple of pickleball courts within our system, and demand is exceeding supply. And we hear from a lot of folks, which resulted in our planning process back in 2020. And on this slide, you can see that over 96% of our respondents surveyed were very much in support of these court modifications that we're going to talk about. Next slide. And so the project resulted in converting existing dilapidated courts at Holmberg into 8 pickleball courts, and taking the existing Linwood tennis courts and again renovating those to serve as tennis.
Well, Holmberg Park, these are gonna go where the old pool is, right?
That would
Was
be
that
the
the
next
plan?
phase. That's
Oh.
more of the expanded
Oh,
vision
Okay,
when we get to master planning, but this phase would only work with the existing tennis courts that are there right now.
okay.
But yes, we have, in larger plans, we've looked at use of the old pool site as having great potential for that.
Okay.
And the folks are very excited. And that was a lot of the feedback in the survey. Rather than have, say, 4 pickleball courts and a tennis court at each park, the direction for the community is it would be much more beneficial to have a greater number of courts in one location, looking ahead to even more for tournaments and events. And the folks are really crazy excited about pickleball. They really are. And I think if you've been out, you'll notice in some stores that just sell little sporting goods, you'll see pickleball paddles and balls. And that's something I've noticed just in the last year or so. So the demand really continues. As I've mentioned, we've carried this over a couple of years, but the interest continues, the calls continue. And so we're excited to have this on our list for 2023. Next slide. And that just summarizes the ask there. And if this were to be approved, we would start working on the permitting in winter and go forth from there. Okay. Next project.
Looks like I'm up. All right. So the next project is our Liberty Lake Regional Park main parking lot renovation and paving project, which is a component of our phase 1 renovation out there at the park and a carryover from our 2022 capital budget request. This is our number 2 priority on our list of requests this year. Next slide, please. So if you recall, back in 2016, we received a $50,000 anonymous donation to fund the development of a master plan for the park. That plan, which was ultimately approved by the board in 2017, included addressing the main parking lot shown there on the left. Next slide. So in 2020, we developed a grant application to the Recreation and Conservation Office to help fund portions of the phase 1 envisioned improvements, including a new expanded dock, new restroom building, accessibility improvements, and new shade structures at the beach. The main parking lot was excluded from that initial grant application to maximize the competitiveness of our grant submittal. Next slide, please. So earlier this year, the budget office, thank you, was able to advance us $70,000 of the original $700,000 for the main parking lot budget request to complete design and construction documents for the lot concurrently with the phase 1 design work. So as envisioned, this project and budget request involves paving, striping, curbing, and associated stormwater improvements to support the renovated parking lot. Next slide, please. So we are currently at a 30% design with the phase 1 project, while the environmental permitting is moving along nicely. We are anticipating that we'll be in a position to bid this project out in spring of 2023, with construction beginning in mid-August as public use starts to ebb out there. So again, thank you for providing the original grant match funding for the phase 1 project and the $70,000 in design money for the parking lot. So with this additional $630,000 request, we will be able to complete this phase 1 project. Any questions on that? Okay. Next slide, Ron. Okay, staying at the same location, this is our number 6 priority on the list of requests. Maybe number 5 now, I don't know, with plans being pulled out. Okay, good. So our next request is for funding needed to complete phase 1 work on the newest cabin rental shown here. This cabin was designed by Bernardo Wills Architects and is intended to meet demand for rental cabins at the park. Next slide, please. So currently we have 11 tent sites, 20 RV sites, and 4 cabin sites that compose the campground. Per the master plan, we are to continue to provide for a variety of camping options. But as you might know, rental cabins in general are the hot trend when it comes to overnight stays, not just through Airbnb, but at federal, state, local campgrounds nationally. Similarly, the Liberty Lake cabins are extremely popular and generate nearly double the per site revenue as RV sites out there, helping to further offset operational costs at the park. Next slide, please. So in summary, this request for $60,000 will allow our operations division to move forward with the phase 1 construction of this cabin, which includes site work, foundation, framing, and weatherproofing. Any questions on this project or request? Okay, I'm turning it over to Doug.
No, so Paul,
Oh,
Paul,
not so fast.
before you go. So, so apologize, I've got a cold, so I'm not talking well. But on the funding, are you looking for general fund dollars or is this REIT $2?
It's good.
REIT 2 is what they're signaling.
Should we all just say it out?
Okay.
Everybody's whispering it, nobody wants to just say it. REIT 2, Mary.
Everything Doug
Like,
wants
I'm
to
the
say.
only one who gets to whisper. Okay, thank you.
Next slide. Okay, and I'll start by saying this is the one and only project on our list that's identified REIT 1 funds. All of the other projects are identified for REIT 2. From a priority standpoint, this is our number 1 ranked project. And what we're looking at is I'll just jump in here. For the last 25 years, this building has served as the headquarters for the Spokane County Conservation District. Like the land that it sits on, this building shall officially become Spokane County property at the end of this month. County Parks is very excited for the opportunity to relocate from our existing administrative offices, which you can see are located just north of this building on the slide. The new site will provide additional space and is much better suited to accommodate our administrative staff with storage for existing vehicles and equipment not currently available at the present location. Additionally, the move is supported and would help enable implementation of the 2021 master plan for Vista Stadium, which identifies use of the existing admin as a necessary component to meet the Major League Baseball 2025 mandates. Next slide, please.
Doug, is that the extension branch just directly north of the?
Yes,
Is that okay?
yes. Absolutely.
Just want to make sure.
No, yep. While the building itself is in relatively good condition, County Parks have worked together with county facilities to identify improvements needed to clean up and secure the site, to utilize the site safely and more efficiently. So much of what you're looking at in this slide would be removed to clean and open up the space. And that, the photo on the left is actually what you see adjacent, running parallel with Havana there and some of the other. Next slide. So this slide just contains a few photos of the existing conditions inside the building. Next slide. And on this slide, we've just outlined several of the items that are identified in terms of the renovation. You can see we've put a lot of time into analyzing the space, both outdoor and indoor. The security is a really key component here with some of the challenges given the current failing infrastructure serving the site, the fencing, the overgrowth, the location of the site. So we've outlined again some specific improvements here. Security on the inside, we're looking to modernize the conference room on the main floor, as well as on the upper level. There's an even larger conference room on the upper level that's great for public meetings. One thing the building is lacking is restrooms, so we're again would propose to install restrooms on that upper level to help serve the conference room and the office space there as well. And just your basic repaint, because overall it really is, it's in pretty good shape. Next slide, please. So again, in summary, the ask is for $916,000 to allow us to move forward with this project, and we would look at moving forward right away. I think we're in conversations with facilities, just given that the site's going to be turned over to the county. We're hoping to move forward sooner than later as far as just on the general cleanup with the overgrowth and working with Gil. This would be a general fund building that facilities would essentially maintain. So we work closely with them on and would continue to through the improvements. Happy to answer any questions on this project.
Doug, would there be any other people occupying the building?
We don't have others at this point. We've looked at a bigger picture that could potentially allow for a centralization of operations, or short term, there could be some ability to house additional persons at the site. So it really allows a better space for our current employees and for future either expansion or consolidation.
And how long will it take physically to move you from where you're at to the conservation building?
I think when we looked at drew out the original timeline, I think we were targeting 3 to 5 months. And just a lot of that depends on availability, but there's a lot of small projects and expertise like the security fencing, the security enhancements, where we would be able to utilize the small works roster rather than say one large project bid out. As we talked to them and looked at this project, we would see a series of small projects. So that could allow it to proceed more quickly.
But you would want to accomplish the move before the start of the next baseball season?
I don't know if we would, I'm sure they would be thrilled if we were out by that point, but I don't know that that's driving the timeline at this point. If we would be able to make the move related to baseball, if we were out next year, that would set it up nicely for that master plan implementation, the planning going on there. So that would be great. I know, I think they would be thrilled to have access to that sooner if it were to be available.
And can you explain why this is REIT 1 versus REIT 2?
Because REIT 2 is more limited to park improvements, and this is not considered a park improvement, even though it's improving those that provide parks and providing a more productive environment. But it doesn't meet the threshold or the criteria for REIT 2.
Thank you. Gets the points.
Whew, that's a good test. All right.
So
Great.
Doug, I've got a question for you.
Yes.
So security fencing, your building currently does not have that. The extension building doesn't have that. Is there a reason why it's needed there?
Well, it's there now, but it's dilapidated and been allowed to fail. They've had a lot of challenges with uninvited campers and other folks trying to reside on the property and on the site. And so we met quite a bit with the former occupants who provided a lot of insight into that, which was very helpful in working with our teams at the county to design and identify improvements that would be needed to provide a safe and secure site. So they've had some real challenges with that. And so the type of fencing, for example, we've identified, I think is very similar to what surrounds the medical office, coroner's office. And it's used at other sites, and it's much less vulnerable than traditional chain link, which has been cut numerous times at this site and near this site, and has not been effective at keeping folks out that don't have business to be there.
No, which again, I understand. But with increasing, opening up the landscaping and all those other things, I'm just, I don't know what the budget is for all of that to then see, because is the conservation district, they didn't really trim back their trees. And so there's a lot of shaded areas and all of that, where like is the extension office having the same issues? I guess that's one of my questions.
They have had some similar issues. I've had some conversations with Gary. We've even had an increase in vandalism and activity around our existing building, where we have no landscaping really that would, but we've had some challenges even, but they have a much much higher rate of vandalism at this site, significantly higher than what we have next door.
And partly was the vandalism that was partly when it was empty versus when they were occupying it. Is that correct? That's what I understand.
No, a lot of it, and some of the challenges Gary has had have been while it's occupied. Either vehicles where the gas tanks are being drilled into and drained. Trying to recall some of the other challenges Gary's recently had over there at the Cooperative Extension, with folks walking outdoors and being confronted again by individuals that don't have business there. They've had some vandalism to vehicles during the daytime operating hours, as well as off hours. And so there's been a steady increase of vandalism and criminal activity. And so we have tried to plan accordingly to provide a safe and secure environment for staff to work in.
Thank you.
Okay,
On to the next.
I think we're ready for the.
Okay, Bear Lake. All right, this is our number 3 priority in the list of requests this year. And this funding request is associated with a local grant match requirement for a grant application submitted to the Washington State Recreation and Conservation Office to help fund shoreline renovation and enhancements to Bear Lake's east and west shoreline areas. So you may recall that back in 2020, we installed fencing to block off public access to most of the west shore to address risk management concerns associated with gabion basket retaining walls that had reached end of life. Next slide, please. So, as a reminder, this is a heavily used regional park in North Spokane County with over 700 vehicles entering the park daily during peak summer months. It is the only public lake access of its kind in Spokane County north of the Spokane River, with other lake access points in this part of the county being for boat access only. So it's really important to this part of the community up there. Next slide, please. So throughout last year, Julie Neff in our office did a great job leading a master planning process to develop a phase 1 master plan for the park focused on the shoreline areas to get us to a grant application ready status. Through that process, there was an extensive public input, was solicited through an on-location meeting as well as several online surveys, as you can see here. Next slide, please. The community preferred design includes significant public access improvements to the east and west shoreline areas, including removal of the failing gabion baskets along the shoreline, enhanced lake access for swimming and viewing, expanded fishing piers, and a new non-motorized watercraft launch. Next slide, please. So with the phase 1 design at 60% and environmental permitting well underway, Julie was able to submit a very competitive grant application to the Recreation and Conservation Office, which is currently ranked 8th out of 25 projects within the grant category and within funding range that we anticipate. So providing this committed match funding in 2023 will allow us to advance the design documents to 100%, secure that permitting, and put the project in a position to be fast-tracked for this grant funding. Any questions?
Mention one of the elements for the grant funding is if you're ready to go.
Yeah, so that's something that we found out recently is basically this state grant funding source, it's land and water conservation funding. So it's a federal funding pass through. And basically what the state does is look at projects within the full 2-year range of funding and sort of fast track those that are ready to go from a permitting standpoint. So that's why we would like to kind of get the ball rolling, because otherwise it would potentially push that federal funding to 2024. So we wouldn't be able to begin construction until probably fall of 2024. So. Question. Any other questions? Okay.
So you're looking to try to get that identified sooner than later, the 1.5?
Yeah, the match funding, yeah, because what the grant funding source allows us to do is basically move forward with design and permitting costs and be eligible for reimbursement, even though we don't have a grant contract yet under or in place for the project.
Do we have a revenue source pinpointed for that?
That would be REIT 2 as well.
REIT 2 as well?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but I think we need to see what the REIT 2 looks like. I mean, get a full picture of where we're at on REIT 2.
Yeah, the requested funding sources from REIT 2, but yes, need to understand the capacity within it.
Do we want to queue this stuff up for next week or the week after to kind of have a deep dive into REIT 2? Or is that part of the budget, President? Will we get sort of a good overall look at REIT 2 here?
We need to bring REIT 2 back around. Yeah, we talked about it August sometime.
Okay.
But yeah, I think we're hoping for later this month to bring REIT 2 back as a conversation again. REIT 1 and 2. Obviously.
And that'd be a good time to recap in total all the capital requests and the sources of funding.
And this one just sticks out to me because the federal dollar is so big. It's like we don't want to lose that one.
Yeah,
Right, no, I would say I agree. I just want to make sure that, yeah, we've got the capacity in REIT 2. So, I mean, we can have that conversation sooner than later.
Yeah, I would add that there might also be some sequencing options here where if we were fronted some of the money up front to basically complete the design and the permitting, that would allow us to fast track the federal funding, at least get that in place. Okay. So
Yeah, even a portion
a
of it.
portion of it, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
So would be helpful.
Yep.
It's good to know.
Okay, next slide. This project. These are beauties. So our next project, which is our rank number 4 on our priority list, is the John H. Shields Park renovation. So this park is located off of Upriver Drive, kind of that Beacon Hill, Camp Sakani area. So this is another RCO grant application match. The project involves renovating and enhancing Shields Park, which has seen significant vandalism and misuse over the years, as demonstrated by these great photos.
Paul, you guys work hard, but we can do better play structures than that, can't we?
Oh, the one on the right, that's like a nature play right there. So you pick up the sticks and move them. I don't know. It's supposed to be challenging.
It's challenging, yeah.
All right, next slide, please. So this project provides sort of low-hanging fruit opportunities to address accessibility, connectivity, and activating space currently seeing misuse and causing some security issues out there. So as you can see here, connecting the park with the Centennial Trail is a pretty straightforward project that's supported by our Public Works Department. Next slide, please. So in 2021, we pursued the development of a master site plan for the park with significant outreach and feedback from stakeholders. Focusing on the west side of the park here, the vision improvements include creating an improved parking lot with lighting and connecting the growing neighborhood to the west with this park, where currently the situation is a undeveloped gravel parking area that has become sort of an attractive nuisance more so over the years, with people setting up fruit stands, dumping stuff, dumping derelict vehicles, dumping 55-gallon drums of untreated sewage. The list goes on. So it's a fun one for our operations division. Next slide, please. And then moving east along the park, along Upriver Drive, we will focus on creating connection with the Centennial Trail, enhancing accessibility throughout the site, and installing a bouldering playground to activate the space that often sees negative activity. So that's kind of a cool opportunity of sort of connecting younger folks with the climbing opportunities afforded at Beacon Hill and Shields Park in particular. Next slide, please. So at this point, we've partnered with the City of Spokane Parks and Recreation Department to develop a joint grant application to the Recreation and Conservation Office that combines our project with their Camp Sakani parking lot renovation project. That grant application has had significant community support, including $185,000 in private donations, and is currently ranked number 5 out of 25 in that same category as Bear Lake, well within the anticipated funding range. So the requested funding of $300,000 for the county's grant match will leverage $1.8 million of private, state, and local funding. Any questions on this project or funding request? Okay, and we'll skip the next 3 slides, Doug?
Oh, yeah,
That's all me.
it's good, it's good. So that's the exciting, there we go, thank you. So that the stormwater project, actually, we will be talking to Jeff about ARP funds, and maybe we won't even have to come back to you. So it looks like it might line up with one of the current categories. So jumping to our last, this is our number 7 ranked request, and essentially it's some funding for contingency. Several of the projects, as we mentioned earlier, were adopted and rolled forward in the 2022 budget. So given some of the volatility in the construction market, there could be some growth or increase, and having a few dollars to serve as a contingency for all of these different projects would be very, very helpful. And it also is identified just for that unforeseen, because it seems, despite our best efforts, we occasionally have some type of a system failure with the infrastructure. And 15,000 acres, we have a lot of different facilities in there, and so it just can be helpful for that unforeseen as well. So we've identified those dollars with that in mind. And with that concludes our presentation. I don't know if it would be helpful to go up to our second slide that summarizes all the projects and the amounts, and happy to answer any additional questions that you might have. Again, deleting that Plants Ferry stormwater NPDES compliance request.
Doug, if I may take the liberty to try to summarize the 23 request. In total, you're looking for $6,559,000. Of that amount, $2,443,000 comes from grants. So you're looking at a request of $4,116,000. Of that $4,116,000, REIT 1 is $916,000. REIT 2 is $3.2 million.
Exactly. Yep.
And that's the number we estimated that is the capacity each year in REIT 2 at this time.
Correct. Yeah, we have very intentionally landed at that amount when we subtract the project that shouldn't be on the list. And there are other projects that we're pursuing other funds for, but again, today we're speaking specifically to those that we're requesting through the capital budget process. And appreciate the opportunity to share these with you and make the request.
I've got a request for the team. If you would, on the 6-year, for each of the projects where there is multiple funding sources, break them out. I think I've made that
That is on
request to you.
the larger spreadsheet that we have, so we can absolutely share that. It's just hard to get it in a printable,
Okay.
digestible
Right.
version.
That way the commissioners are able to see just what Gary,
Right, so there's
And
one, yeah,
highlight.
that has, it has kind of the years going out. For each of the funding sources, you can see how much Doug has slotted for REIT 2 versus a grant versus REIT 1.
Right, but, so I'm just gonna double check, so, on, like, on the spreadsheet we got from Gary, so some of the other things coming out of REIT 2 would be some of the scraps, capital requests as well.
Correct.
So, which is why, I mean, we kind of need to really have that breakdown of what's available in REIT 1 and REIT 2 to know what our opportunities are.
agreed.
Do we also have in that spreadsheet, Tessa and Gary, projections of what REIT 1 and REIT 2 will look like in future years? I mean, because as I'm thinking about future capital, a lot of these were 4, 5, 6-year plans. Is that forecasted?
REIT is forecasted in a completely different set of spreadsheets.
But yes.
But yes, REIT is projected, yeah, we have at least 20-year projections for some of our ongoing debt service that we have for REIT.
But we haven't taken and looked at the two of them together.
Not with this most recent information from all the groups.
But it'll provide the capacity that is available for the commissioners to consider which of these projects you want to fund and what kind of capacity is available to fund it.
Right, so what we need to, on that spreadsheet is looking at where we're at, what the additional capacity is that we have, and then what the additional projects are that want to get funded out of those sources, so we can make decisions based on that.
Yep.
Thank you.
Welcome.
All right.
Anything else?
You want to
No.
cover future years' projects or anything, if we've got a little time? You've got quite a few on the list.
Yeah, we do. We have, our 6-year plan identifies about 3.2 million each year. And we could have made an 8-year plan pretty easily. But I'll maybe just mention a few projects that we're looking at, pursuing different funds for. That would include our Plants Ferry complex out there in the eastern part of the county, as well as future parkland and park improvements out in the West Plains, again, looking at our park plan. So as well as some water infrastructure improvements for plants. So we're very optimistic and looking forward to pursuing funds for those, again, separate from the budget process. Those are things that are actively occurring right now. And again, you saw in several of these, just how many of these projects before you today for next year involve potentially successful competitive grant applications. So really proud of Paul and his team for the great work that they're doing on those grants. And it's not easy, but they somehow managed to consistently be competitive with several of the projects that you saw here before you. I think there's another acquisition not on this list, it's just completely covered through grants. So yeah, I think we're good right there. And I know Aaron is here and all ready to go. Unless there's other questions, I mean, we have a lot on our plate and would love to come back at some point with a brief summary just of all the projects that we're wrapping up and have completed this year. It's probably the longest list I've seen in any given time, and so and it's actively happening right now. Over the next month, we'll be wrapping up a lot of construction and improvements that, again, these projects are years in the works, the planning, the funding. It's just so exciting to see them come together. So we're hoping to put together just a real quick clip at some point when it's convenient to come back in the next couple months to go through and show you everything that's been accomplished this year.
We'd love to see that.
No, and yeah, and Doug, I would say, I mean, you guys are phenomenal at using our dollars to leverage for, lots of state and federal grant dollars. So thank you for all you guys are doing there, because it's impressive.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a phenomenal team. And they're all very busy. So, okay. Yeah. Okay, I think I'll slide over to the chair here. Aaron, take the main chair.
If you wanna, no, you got an open one here?
Come on over.
Good afternoon, everyone. We are here to talk about the Fair and Expo capital budget supplemental requests. I know our favorite hot topic right now is the HVAC roof for bays 2 and 3. I'm hearing some encouraging discussions happening around the county regarding this, so that makes my life a little bit easier and making our promoters happier. I've also included some future projects that are on our radar as well, including our campground water and sewer improvements, our ag complex fire suppression sprinklers, restroom showers, improvements for our campground, and repaving Fairgrounds Road and the south parking lot improvements. Ron, if I got the next slide, please. Few of these slides you're going to recognize from when we were here in early July. And just to recap, the HVAC system that provides heating and air conditioning to bays 2 and 3 is no longer functioning. The roof structure leaks in multiple locations, and during rain and snow, there's lovely melting that happens. Requires us to bring out our 5-gallon buckets from Home Depot. They get a sponsorship out of it and they don't even have to pay us for it. So a little bit of background assessment. The next slide, please. The 2 buildings, bays 2 and 3, are some of our heaviest use spaces. They make up about 35,000 square feet of space. And there are 5 rooftop units that service these 2 spaces, located up in the cupola, which you'll see at the top of the picture. So it's a little bit of a tricky thing to access those units, but as I mentioned, they are no longer functioning. Earlier in the year, next slide, please. We worked with Bernardo Wills to put together a proposal and some recommendations. And they came back with a 2-phased approach. Phase 1, removing the HVAC system and the cupola on the top of the building, coming in at $1.5 million. The next slide, please. And then the second phase is replacing the roof, coming in at over $3 million. So our total for this proposal for Bernardo Wills came in at $4,650,000. Since then, with the help of Doug and his awesome knowledge in these projects, we've never taken on anything quite this big at the Fair and Expo in regards to a repair. You did some reaching out, and we had a fabulous meeting on Friday with the Garland Company. So I'm going to turn this over to Doug now.
Great. Next slide, please, Ron. Okay. So following our visit with the board in July, we were able to go back and contact the Garland Company, and they specialize in projects. They have, they've been approved, if you will, for the Omnia contract, which allows us to work directly with them. anything related to water damage and water leakage. And so one of the significant things about working with this company is they were able to come in at no cost and complete a full assessment of the roof, as well as contact heating and ventilation professionals. And so coming out of that meeting with you in July, part of the direction was we really need to have a comprehensive look. And is there a way we can do that without necessarily just investing in an architecture firm to provide, higher design dollars and that sort of thing? And this group was a perfect fit for us to be able to do that. And so it took a little longer. And in fact, they landed literally last Friday. So we appreciate the flexibility with the slides today. So hopefully I've tried to recap the highlights of their presentation here in the next 4 slides. So they came in with several different options on the roof as well as the HVAC. And one thing I'll just point out, if we choose to utilize this company, the contract that they work under requires that I believe the roof has to represent at least 50% of the total project cost. So even though some of these options, they wouldn't be eligible to go forward, they were still very kind enough and objective to complete the analysis. And I'll explain that when we look at some of the other options. So next slide, please. So basically jumping to the preferred recommendation that they identified several, and we'll speak to a few of the others, but the top recommended would be a standing mechanical seam retrofit. It has a 40-year life expectancy, and this would come with a 30-year no dollar limit warranty. So basically a bumper-to-bumper warranty. If anything should happen, it would include labor, materials, everything needed to address or replace the roof within that 30-year period. And you can see this particular method, they would go over the top of the existing roof, and it allows for insulation. In this photo that they show is something that could allow that to happen. And again, there are bullet points on just the pros, if you will, of this particular system that led to its recommendation. They looked at one other that would be a complete tear-off that would have been significantly more expensive, so they didn't even price that one. Next slide, please. And for the heating and ventilation, they're recommending to replace the 5 units with 2 units that would be located on the ground south of the building there, as you can see in the slide. The 2 units would provide greater tonnage or cooling power than the current 5 units do. By locating them on the ground, it would definitely increase the ease for access for maintenance, where currently they have to use lifts, and the cupola with the open air they found, and there's if I had more time, I would have included the several photos that show they were able to pinpoint where the roof is leaking, and the majority of the leaks are happening up in that cupola. The roof system is just pulling apart, which the existing type of roof is known to do that over time and at this point in its life. The new construction style would eliminate that they've proposed. So again, the 35 and 50 ton units would provide 85 ton versus the current 80. Next slide, please. And this is where I'm glad I have a copy in front of me so I can read the font. And so in this slide, I mentioned the 2 alternatives that they looked at for the roof. One of those was would be a 10-year warranty. This was like a fluid applied membrane, where they would come in and pour a liquid over the top. It would, again, it would provide a 10-year warranty. Some of the cons or the negatives, if you will, it's one color. It comes in like an off-white, and they say it would quickly turn an attractive brownish color from the dirt and the dust, and would certainly not fit the aesthetic theme. at the Fair and Expo grounds, but this is again, one option that they
It
have,
might also blind the baseball attendees.
the brightness.
Yes,
But again, they work hard to provide several different options. They teamed up with the Fisher Roofing Company. So in this case, the 10-year warranty repair membrane approach would be about $1,060,000. They also identified a 1 year, just if they were to come in and try and repair it, they could warranty it for a year, and that would be $113,000. So again, we've recommended the retrofit replacement, if you will. And then in this earlier, facilities was mentioning that House Bill 1257. And we, again, one of the first things we did is we brought in the great folks from facilities, Michael, Bruce, to help us out with this project. So they, along with Erin and her team, met at the site, surveyed the site. They've met with us, with a consultant to ask questions and help make sure that the systems that they're identifying would really be a good fit. And we love to lean on their experience. So with that, we've recommended that the 30-year or the 40-year life expectancy product, but they mentioned the 1257, which are these new energy codes. And so I wanted to include that slide. We've added in here another 150,000. One of the things facilities mentioned is this first phase deals with these buildings that are over 50,000 square feet. It may not be too far down the line when it starts to target buildings over 20,000 square feet. And so with that style of roof, if you were to go back a couple of slides, Ron, and show that picture of the insulation, there's kind of a one-time opportunity while the roof would go down where additional insulation could be added that could help down the road, a few years down the road, should that House Bill 1257 expand on to, say, 20,000 square foot and over. And so we've included in the budget some funds that would allow us to incorporate some insulation into the roof. So that's an option. It's an alternative, but it could be one that could pay dividends down the road before the next wave of mandated energy upgrades comes into effect. So then that's it for the 4 slides. If there's any questions. If not, Erin has additional slides.
So just a second, Doug. So then on the HVAC units, are those going to be meet the new energy guidelines and efficiency?
The two, yes, they would do that. These are, I believe, natural gas units on the heat side, if I recall, and we'll continue to work with the contractor and facilities to fine tune the specifications and make sure that we're hitting the mark with energy efficiency on the units as well as the insulation. So there's an opportunity through those units. Both the roof and the HVAC provide opportunities to maximize energy efficiency.
Okay.
and we're anticipating a really long lifespan for these buildings.
I assume there will have to be something calculated as far as some sort of enclosure or security around the units if we're gonna have them on the
We
ground.
have talked about that,
Some
yes.
sort of wrought iron enclosure or something
Maybe it
around
shocks
it.
you.
We
when
might
you
have
get to the
a
roofs.
specification handy here in the
Yeah.
near future, but
I know a lot of commercial
Yes.
buildings that
yes.
they come in one day and all of a sudden it's really hot on a summer day and they go out and it's because somebody ripped out
Yes.
anything they can get money for.
Right, and another thing we mentioned, if we design it right, we could have solid surface between the building to reduce the sound. So that folks that are enjoying the event will be less likely to hear the noise from the unit. So we would make it a combination of sound and protective enclosure to go around it.
Sounds
But
good.
it should help reduce maintenance and operational costs long-term going forward, and we being much more accessible.
And we should be able to maintain the cupola structure
Yes.
on the roof, which is great architecturally. It complements our facility.
That is proposed, in this proposal, you would not have the openings that you do now, which have led to compromising the roof. So between the change in construction style and eliminating all of those vents on top, they would add the snow bars. They had some photos that showed some damage to the existing roof that had caused from snow and ice falling off, so we're accounting for that. I feel like the company did a very thorough job, and, you know, being able to look at the existing state really tells the story of the last 20, 30 years and what it's run into. And they've, I think, put together a design that would really try to account for those challenges and mitigate some of the damage and prevent it from happening in the future.
Would you leave the old units up there then, just to save in the cost of removing them?
We would remove them,
They would be
is the
removed.
plan right
Okay.
now, yeah.
So the cupola, I see are there costs in here to disassemble the cupola?
I believe if I recall from their presentation here, they would not completely disassemble it. They would remove some of the roof and some of the side panels in order to crane out the existing unit. So part of what would work with this is they wouldn't have to dismantle the entire thing. I think when we talked to the architecture firm initially, that was one of their initial concepts is, oh, we'd have to remove the entire thing. But with this style, they would remove some panels. They would get in there. It would utilize a lot of what's there now and work with that.
Okay. Well, I agree, it's a good architectural feature.
Yes.
I just want to make sure that if there is a cost differential of replacing it as is versus eliminating it and building it into a secure roof, if it was substantial, I think the commissioners will want to know of that. We should know of that because the choices, if it's going to be not a full demo, but removing certain things and then sealing it for reducing the impacts on the facilities, and it's a cost neutral and we're able to retain the cupola, then that's a good outcome. But I just want to make sure that we're not possibly leaving dollars on the table.
Right. Initially, we thought there could be a separate option for that, but with the way this group came back and their approach to removing they did not identify any specific cost savings to leave or eliminate the cupola. Was not presented, just based on their analysis.
The roof replacement in your model or estimation wouldn't occur until 2024. So is that the time frame you're looking at now, or are you backing it up to 23?
I think with this proposal, we would hope to complete the entire project in 2023.
That would be
Yeah,
the dream scenario. With all of our event activity, it does leave us limited windows of opportunity to remove the existing units and take care of that portion. And then, the roofing would be a whole other. But the nice thing is our events are primarily, Thursday, Friday, Saturdays, Sundays. So we do have some weekdays where if they want to repair the roof and replace it, it wouldn't impact the events as much. So that's good.
I think the contractor mentioned a very long lead time on the HVAC units. But if it, again, were to be done as a package as proposed, they would be able to do a lot of the work in advance and basically plug those in. They could get the duct work done. They just could have a lot of the work so that they more or less plug in and go when they come.
It makes sense to do it all as one
It's
package.
more economical if
It
it's done
does.
as one package. That's what this group does. That's what this proposal represents. We certainly can go back and look at individual ones, but and again, we're happy to do that if it would be helpful. But I believe there are some cost savings. This came in a couple $100,000 below what the architecture firm had given us as an estimate in that original presentation. And there's potential to come in
under budget with this.
Any other questions regarding this section? Okay. Well, just looking into my future crystal ball of things, one, the Fair and Expo is working on a capital plan for the future, but in putting together the supplemental request, I've just outlined a handful of other projects that are on our radar for the future and that we're exploring. And I will dive into that if that's okay. It shouldn't take too much time. Looking at our Carnival camping area. So when our Carnival company comes for the duration of the fair, they bring a lot of workers with them and a lot of bunk houses, and they are essentially camping on the very southern border of our campground area, in an area that doesn't really have water or sewer available in that site. And you're bringing camping facilities, cooking facilities, RVs, and shower houses. So what we would like to do in a partnership with Butler Amusements, our Carnival company, is work on installing water in that area and connect to a sewer line that is in the STA parking lot. So we did in 2020 have a preliminary study done on this, and it came in around $80,000. So in recent conversations, I think fortunately Butler is actually looking to pick up the full cost. So we can just check that off the list. We'll move through that one. Another thing that's on our radar is our ag complex. And if you could go to the next slide, Ron, thank you. These buildings are not sprinklered. Ag A is, but there's B, C, and D in multi-purpose A. Ag A is sprinklered because in 2008, we had our great building collapse from the snowfall that took down both sides of our buildings. So when we repaired that, we had to incorporate sprinkler systems. These buildings were built as agricultural use buildings, but we're primarily using them for consumer-based events now. So we really do need to, for safety purposes and code and fire department, we need to look into adding more sprinkler systems throughout that complex. So we've included that in our future planning. The next slide, please, Ron. We are wanting to build a new bathhouse facility in our campground area. We currently only offer restrooms. If you're camping with us, you have to venture onto the grounds into one of our other buildings for shower facilities. So we'd like to offer restrooms and showers in that area. So that's a high priority. We're seeing a lot more campers that are just passing through the area that want to stay with us, and we've seen a lot of growth. So we're encouraged by that, but if we could improve our amenities, that would be helpful. Next slide, Ron. And when you enter the fairgrounds off of Havana, it is still referred to as Fairgrounds Road. If you look on any maps, you'll see that. This road gets used and abused. If you look at the photos here, there's a lot of alligating in the asphalt, huge patch marks, potholes, and we're seeing about 600,000 visitors a year utilizing this area with the baseball use added in there as well. So we definitely would like to beautify our front entrance and make a lovely road for our guests to arrive on. And lastly, next slide, please, Ron. During COVID, we had the opportunity to visit with the city of Spokane Valley, kind of doing some down and dirty numbers and planning on what it would look like to improve the south parking lot. So if you're at the Avista Stadium on the south side, that's the dirt parking lot there, all of the overflow. It's heavily used at fair. It's heavily used by baseball. And you'll see there's a really nice map here that outlines what that could look like being paved. It's a two-phase process, at least in this initial proposal. And if you go to the last slide, please, Ron, that it is close to a $4 million project to do all of the things that need to be done there. Phase one, including grading the site, getting that underground infrastructure in place for lighting and irrigation, graveling, swale construction, and then moving into phase two would be the actual paving of the site, painting those parking spaces, reconstructing the perimeter drive aisle, adding curbing, installing lighting, and all the landscaping features. So in the future, I think with the expanded use of our campus, between all of our partners, that would be a really nice amenity to have. So I know I cruised through those pretty darn quick, but any questions?
No, I'm good.
So, sorry, Erin, I guess I do have a couple questions.
Sure.
So you're looking at those as kind of just out in the future. Is there potential for revenue savings from you guys, excess revenue that could help pay for some of those?
We are working on that, Mary, in our capital planning, and Bill, our finance person, which he's here with me, definitely looking to see how we can carve out and set up a capital budget moving forward to help support these projects.
Thank you.
The HVAC and the roof, given the condition that they're in and the timeliness of those, we're likely going to have to consider alternative sources, but as Aaron said, future capital needs, looking to try to find revenue streams within the Fair and Expo to support those in the future is the goal.
Does our campgrounds year-round or seasonal?
Seasonal, so we've just shut it down. We'll reopen in March.
That might, do we see if there are, could we foresee if there are improvements made to that? It could be a desired year-round utilization?
I believe so, yes.
And Erin, the water for that, is there a way to get it coming from somewhere other than the city of Spokane?
You mean out of, never mind, I don't know. No, I don't know. That's a great question. I was gonna make a joke, but I'm not going to. So, yeah, I don't know, Mary, because we're pretty limited, right, Bill? Unless we,
Yeah, I don't know of any hookups that we have out there that would hit, or we could go to the city of Spokane Valley or any other water district that would be available to us. I mean, granted, we have a little aquifer down there, but that's private, so.
Yeah, I just didn't know if there was water hookups coming on since it was so far on the east side.
yeah, we'd have to look at a boundary map to see their service area. I think there has been discussion that there may be some other irrigation districts nearby, but I would have to look into that.
Yeah, I haven't looked at it in a while either, Commissioner, but I believe that is all, the fairgrounds is all within the city of Spokane water service area. And likely anything alternative, we would need to look at some sort of reclaimed water infrastructure. And that would be something that could be evaluated, likely very expensive, but is something that could and should be evaluated.
Okay, is that any other questions or comments?
None from me.
Pat, do you have anything else?
I do not. Gary, we've got a couple more sessions planned for capital, is that right?
Yes, next Monday, Commissioners, we have the sheriff in detention starting at 2 o'clock on the 17th. And then the following Monday on the 24th, we have queued up Superior Court, IT, and Animal Control. And of course, we have the
Very good, thank
roundtable
you.
tomorrow.
So then, if there's nothing else, then this will adjourn our meeting for today. And we will come back together for our 2 o'clock consent agenda.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.